The boy would never have imagined that. He was just going to the supermarket, only to be targeted by a cow. But fortunately, this was just a dream of the protagonist, Jack. He was taken away by the World Tree, and 6 months had passed. He found a job at a factory in Milwaukee. He became a forklift operator. His hair had grown long, and he earned the admiration of his co-workers, especially from the female workers, who were particularly admiring of him. Jack immersed himself in this peaceful life. However, fate had destined him for something extraordinary. On his way home, he encountered an old woman who was about to fall, and he immediately stepped forward to help. Little did he know that the voice of the old woman suddenly transformed into the voice of Odin. This meant that Odin had finally come knocking. Odin had been waiting at a crucial location for Jack, waiting for a long time. Although he appeared quite disheveled, Jack did not sympathize with him. He knew that Odin always liked some questionable ideas. However, Odin insisted that he was there to help him. Jack refused him, but Odin seemed unconcerned. Everything was within his plan. Upon returning home, Jack discovered that federal agents were investigating him, clearly a leak from Odin. Trying to regain control over Jack, Odin sat in the car waiting, and Jack had no choice but to get in. He understood that Odin still wanted to ally with the old gods to fight against the faction led by Mr. World, the new gods leader. Just as they reached halfway, they unexpectedly encountered a group of new gods blocking their path. The new gods were closing in step by step, but Odin remained unfazed. He handed the wheel to Jack, commanding him to speed towards the enemy. Jack followed his instructions, and then Odin softly sang an incantation in the back seat, causing mysterious runes to shimmer on the windshield. Jack's vision blurred, making it hard for him to see the road. Yet Odin instructed him to turn right. Despite his doubts, he chose to trust Odin. As the car turned, they entered a mysterious realm, the domain of the indigenous gods. Odin instructed Jack to follow closely behind him, but Jack was captivated by the fantastical scenery, forgetting all of Odin's instructions. When he came to his senses, Odin had vanished, and he unexpectedly encountered the indigenous god. The indigenous god recognized Jack, and warned him that the twilight of the gods was approaching. Humanity's fate was in peril, and only Jack could change this tragedy. In a supermarket, a boy held his mother's hand. The figure on the magazine cover suddenly came to life, speaking a sentence to the little cutie. The boy was very confused, as a giant bull engulfed in flames suddenly appeared, scaring him into running away. At the critical moment, the bull abruptly stopped, seemingly trying to identify who the boy really was. In reality, the boy was a young Jack, who had been having the same dream since childhood. The bull was a manifestation of Odin, and Jack had been part of Odin's plan from the beginning. Yet he was completely unaware of this. The indigenous god told Jack that, when his heart and mind became one, the truth would be revealed. At that moment, Odin arrived, clearly intending to interrupt their conversation. In this history, centuries ago, Odin's appearance led to the brutal slaughter of the indigenous gods' people by Odin's followers. The indigenous gods' hatred still lingered, but Odin believed that those people had brought it upon themselves, and it wasn't his fault. Upon hearing this, the indigenous god revealed his true form, planning to teach Odin a lesson. Jack hurriedly intervened, pulling his father away. Now understanding the truth of the matter, decided to keep his distance from this deceitful father, but Odin wouldn't let him go. Just as the father and son argued, a bus arrived, from which a girl stepped out, who happened to be Odin's fiancée, Cordelia. Jack was very puzzled, seeing that Cordelia appeared much younger than Odin. At this moment, Odin mentioned that he needed to borrow from the war god Tyr, and asked Jack if he wanted to go with him. However, Jack no longer wanted to be deceived, and he refused Odin. Odin then gave Jack a key, which was a key to an apartment in Lakeside Town, making Jack feel that his father still cared for him a bit. Odin accompanied Jack to Lakeside Town, while he himself set off to Wisconsin to find Tyr. Inside the apartment, Jack found a letter from Zoya Polyanoa, inviting him to the funeral of the sunset goddess, and asked him to bring the pen he had been given years ago. Faced with the sincere invitation from his savior, Jack decided to accept the invitation. He attended on time the next day, and upon arrival, he discovered that he had once again fallen into Odin's scheme. Nevertheless, Jack was not in the mood to engage with him, and instead expressed his condolences to Zoya's sister. He walked up to the rooftop and found that Polyanoa had been waiting there, praising Jack's new hairstyle, and examining the pen. He said, Jack will soon encounter two different paths, but he must choose the more challenging one. In order to obtain what he desires, Jack felt puzzled, and asked, "What are these two paths?" Polyanoa said she could only see up to this point, and she tossed a coin into the air, which transformed into the moon. Then she told Jack that, when Jack can't find his way, the stars will guide him. When this man misspoke, the woman beat him with a stick, leaving the other employees shocked. In fact, all the people present were faceless new gods of Mr. World. As for this woman, she was the result of Mr. World's transformation in the third season, where he had shifted to a female form, and her character had been revealed. At this moment, the god of technology arrived. Mr. World was displeased with their performance, because he had failed to convince Queen Sheba to join their side. Mr. World warned that, if he couldn't achieve goal, he would face the same fate as the man who misspoke just now. The god of technology understood the seriousness of the situation, and wasted no time, immediately seeking out Queen Sheba. The queen now lived a luxurious life. The god of technology expressed his intentions, but Queen Sheba refused. As long ago, she had chosen to remain neutral, unwilling to be involved in the conflicts between old and new gods. However, the god of technology had helped her before, and proposed repaying the favor by joining the camp of the new gods. The queen had once been a wanderer on the streets, with no human followers, and it was he who had extended a helping hand that led to the queen's current lifestyle. In fact, this was also why Queen Sheba had provided intelligence to the new gods before, but now she had decided to stay out of it, knowing full well the brutality of war. In her eyes, the god of technology knew nothing about war. Queen Sheba decided to let him experience it firsthand. In the moment they made contact, the god of technology instantly fell to the ground, entering the queen's memories. He hadn't expected the queen to have such a tragic past. In fear of death, he hastily fled. On the other hand, since Sweeney was killed by Jack, Laura had been seeking ways to revive him. Unfortunately, Sweeney met Laura, and after that, what changes will their destinies undergo? He hadn't expected that. Even after his death, he couldn't rest. Laura discovered a tomb, where she placed Sweeney in a sarcophagus, deciding to use an ancient ritual to return the Stardust coin to the departed Sweeney. Attempting to awaken his soul, she knew that after losing the coin, she would also face death. Yet Laura had no regrets about their past relationship, even developing feelings for Sweeney. With her last strength, she carved a wish onto Sweeney's forehead, hoping that upon his rebirth, he would find the Spear of Destiny to avenge her against the god Odin. After completing all this, Laura plunged a knife into her own chest, because she was already dead, unable to feel pain. Yet the moment the coin was removed, Laura lost control of her body, the coin slipping from her grasp, struggling to place it in Sweeney's hand, but she couldn't hold on until the end, falling onto the cold ground. Without the protection of the lucky coin, Laura's fate seemed to come to an end. At this moment, she was riding the stairway to Purgatory, to face the final judgment. Purgatory was no longer as the ancient legends described, but enveloped in modern elements, where everyone held a ticket determining their fate, to enter paradise, or descend into hell. However, Laura refused to accept her fate, and discarded her ticket, for she knew her sins were grave, and she couldn't enter paradise. Laura swapped her ticket with another's, blending in, only to be faced with numerous sealed doors. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't enter any of them. In her moment of despair, the space behind her suddenly collapsed, prompting Laura to run frantically. In her panic, she rushed through a door, finding herself in a projection room, where just beyond the door she had entered, it seemed as if she faced nothingness. Laura awaited assistance. As drowsiness crept over her, two spirit guides quietly appeared, tasked with helping Laura review her life, so that the departed soul could understand her life, and find peace. But at this moment, Laura lacked the patience to reminisce, trying to leave, only to stumble into a pool. As the door opened, luckily, the spirit guides appeared just in time, and rescued her. After this scare, Laura calmed down, and the guides continued to lead her through her memories. She saw her father, and her mother's ultimate downfall. Under the influence of such a family, she inherited her father's traits, becoming a sea witch. She finally realized that she had never truly loved Jack, but had been unwilling to admit it. She was willing to face her life, and accept the judgment of fate. Life is always full of uncertainties. Just moments ago, a young boy discovered Sweeney's body in the tomb. Sweeney was about to turn into a mummy. Shortly after, professionals took Sweeney's body away, leaving only the boy's father to clean up the bloodstains. However, He did not notice that the mysterious potion covered by Laura's ashes. This potion belonged to Sweeney, obtained from the Grim Reaper of the underworld, containing the power to bring Laura back from the dead, but requiring the blood of true love as a catalyst. Sweeney had cherished it, hesitating to use it lightly, and all of this seemed like a fateful arrangement. As the man was cleaning the bloodstains, unexpectedly, the water pipe got clogged. As he was about to get up to fix it, he slipped, accidentally crushing the vial of potion. At the same time, blood happened to drip from the sarcophagus above, mixing with the mysterious liquid on the ground. In an instant, a bright light flashed, and Laura was carried away by a mysterious force. The man watched the scene, while Laura herself looked around in disbelief. She had finally achieved her wish of resurrection, but all of this stemmed from an accident. The man looked at Laura before him, and he was astonished. Laura had once tried to sacrifice herself for Sweeney's resurrection, in exchange for Sweeney's rebirth, but things did not go as planned, resulting in this outcome. The man handed Sweeney's ashes to Laura, and comforted her softly. Laura knew that even though Sweeney had passed, he was still a deity. His divinity remained, and it was through draining blood that Laura was resurrected. It was then that she realized that her true love was not Jack after all, but Sweeney. It was the power of this love that allowed her to be reborn. Their destinies intertwined, but now it ended with the departure of the Irish leprechaun. In the town by the lake, a major event was unfolding. Jack had intended to enjoy lunch there, but was surprised to find everyone casting disdainful glances his way, even the police following his car. The reason being, a young girl had mysteriously disappeared, and Jack, being the only one frequenting the town recently, became a suspect. Faced with suspicion, Jack confessed his whereabouts to the police, hoping to clear his name. Upon returning home, he discovered that a recent surge in child disappearances in the town. From this perspective, the secrets of the lakeside town were far more complex than they seemed on the surface. Jack looked at the newspaper, and soon fell asleep. In his dream, he found himself once again in that familiar supermarket, but this time, something was different. The protagonist in the magazine had been replaced by Queen Sheba. Just as he was immersed in this strange fantasy, Queen Sheba suddenly asked Jack to save her. Had she encountered some mishap? It turned out that just moments ago, Queen Sheba had devoured the IT industry giant. Bill. Bill was a key partner of Mr. World. As the Queen browsed through the information on Bill's phone, she regretted it, as Bill was already a family man. The center of that message was Bill's daughter. At that moment, Bill's bodyguard had arrived. The Queen sensed danger, and quickly kicked the phone under the sofa. She grabbed a weapon from her fan, preparing to defend herself. However, against the bodyguard, the Queen lacked the support of human followers, and appeared powerless. She was pinned down on the table. The sedative rendered her powerless to resist. Upon learning of Bill's fate, Mr. World was furious, yet he still tried to persuade the Queen to join the new god's camp. Queen Sheba immersed herself in self-reflection. Ignoring Mr. World's proposal, she simply knelt down, regretting her actions. Witnessing this scene, Mr. World decided to imprison her here forever. When Jack arrived at the place where Queen Sheba devoured Bill, he discovered a mess inside, with splatters of blood, and the Queen was missing. At that moment, in the corner, the trembling god of technology caught Jack's attention. He suspected that the god of technology was responsible for all this. Jack threw the god of technology against the wall, but unexpectedly, the god of technology fell into a state of chaos. Ever since the Queen introduced it into her memories, it had been experiencing malfunctions and bugs. This was precisely why the god of technology was seeking the Queen. A tale of loss of control and redemption was brewing in his mind. Jack couldn't accept this explanation. The god of technology displayed surveillance footage to confirm, which showed in the video that Queen Sheba had devoured the IT industry leader, Bill. Following this, Bill's close bodyguard burst in and took the Queen away. Jack decided to track the bodyguard in order to learn from them the whereabouts of Queen Sheba, the god of technology, in order to repair its mechanical faults. Also decided to join Jack's mission. Before long, Jack successfully apprehended a bodyguard. They entered an alleyway to interrogate about the Queen's whereabouts. The bodyguard showed no intention of revealing information, but the god of technology showcased its unique ability. Amidst a deep growl, the god of technology transformed into a data form, terrifying the bodyguard. Under pressure, the bodyguard disclosed the exact location. They quickly headed to the rescue. Meanwhile, Queen Sheba was undergoing a profound transformation in her life. Tears streaming down continuously, with each tear that fell, piercing through the hard ground, forming a pool as fingertips gently touched them. The tears transformed into a pool, where the queen reflected on herself, remembering thousands of years ago, when she killed King Solomon, to ascend to the throne, yet burdened with a curse, dependent on devouring others to survive, causing her immense torment. As she immersed herself in self-blame, a mysterious woman suddenly appeared, guiding her into the spiritual realm. Originally, they were the dormant power-bearers residing within the queen's body. With the queen's sincere repentance, they awakened, jointly propelling the full awakening of the queen's power. With a stomp on the ground shattered in response, and a mysterious power emerged. In an instant, several of Mr. World's henchmen were all sent flying. At this moment, Jack and the god of technology finally arrived at the scene, only to be astonished to find that their assistance was no longer needed, as the guards were already defeated. Seeing Jack's puzzled expression, Queen Sheba emerged from the water wall, a power so mighty even the god of technology was intimidated, forcing it to retreat temporarily. The queen, upon seeing Jack's arrival, felt comforted in her heart, for in this world, perhaps only Jack could save her. The man effortlessly pulled out the decayed tooth from his mouth. The young boy was very surprised. He hadn't even recovered from his shock, and the tooth extraction process had already concluded. The man was none other than Odin's brother, the god of war, Tyr, whose combat prowess was no less than Odin's. But as time passed, he transitioned into a dentist. Tyr's current life was quite prosperous, which inevitably stirred greed in Odin, as he knew that in the battle against the new gods, funds were an indispensable ally. Odin made a request, hoping that Tyr could provide financial assistance, but what he didn't expect was that Tyr readily agreed, and the amount on the check far exceeded what Odin needed, which surprised and delighted Odin. At the moment of parting, Tyr also promised that, if Odin required it, he was willing to die in battle for him. But Odin was no fool. In fact, in this world, Tyr desired more to kill Odin. Because of Odin, his hand was bitten off by the giant wolf Fenrir, and his beloved goddess, Sif, was taken by Odin. Although things seemed harmonious on the surface, Odin understood that it was all a facade. But regardless, the money ultimately ended up in his own pocket. When Odin returned home, he saw on TV that his followers had mysteriously died overnight, and it didn't seem to be the work of the new gods. He decided to go to a tavern to find answers, his target being John, a lead singer in a band, and also one of Odin's loyal followers, responsible for attracting followers through music. In reality, John's true identity was that of a giant bear. Due to his volatile emotions and tendency to lose control, Odin suspected that this might be related to the deaths of his followers. This statement angered John to the point of gritting his teeth, and he stabbed a dagger into his palm to demonstrate his innocence. Odin also found it difficult to deal with John, as he was, after all, one of his followers. Odin also needed people like John to gain the power of belief for himself, even if it turned out that John was behind these events. Odin couldn't really say much, but the story was just beginning. Bigger surprises were yet to come. When Odin hurried back to his residence, a large fireball smashed into the front of his car. Odin was surprised, and went to see what was happening, only to find that it was a burning corpse. Odin finally understood that there was more to this than met the eye, clearly indicating a conflict was brewing. To investigate this matter thoroughly, Odin planned to confront John again for answers, but little did he know that, hidden in the shadows were eyes, closely watching their every move. Before long, Odin arrived with Courtney at John's territory, where they encountered a man named Dunk, who was also an ancient giant bear in essence. Simultaneously, Dunk was John's actual brother. Despite his simple appearance, Dunk was incredibly brutal, having once delighted in cannibalism for a long period of time, but now he had turned into a butcher. Odin explained his purpose, but Dunk insisted that John wasn't present. When John left, he mentioned he was going to visit the dentist. Odin immediately realized the seriousness of the situation. Just a short while ago, at Tyr's clinic, a giant bear blocked Tyr's path. Tyr intended to persuade the bear, but the outcome was unexpected. Odin arrived here quickly. The hospital where Tyr was located was bloodstained. Following the bloodstains, Odin finally found where the blood led to, which was his follower, the giant bear John. John's body had already been gutted, with a note left beside him, guiding Odin to the wolf's den. Odin finally understood that, in fact, Tyr was the source of tragedy for his followers. Tyr appeared at Jack's house, where he falsely claimed that Odin had met with misfortune, enticing Jack to search with him. Unexpectedly, midway, Tyr claimed the car was out of fuel, and drugged Jack's coffee. Jack realized he had been deceived, but it was already too late. A kind passerby approached to inquire only to become a victim. Even their throat was ripped out. When Jack regained consciousness, he found himself deep inside the wolf's den. Jack was confused and puzzled, wondering why Tyr would commit such acts. In fact, this originates from thousands of years ago. Tyr was supposed to be the Norse god king, but due to Odin's influence, he failed. His hand was also bitten off by the giant wolf. This wolf, named Fenrir, was born of Loki. Fenrir was very ferocious, leaving rivers of blood wherever it went. To prevent Fenrir from continuing its slaughter, the gods collaborated to create a chain that imprisoned him at the gates of the divine realm. Odin insisted on provoking him, wanting to test if Fenrir could break free from the chains. Fenrir proposed a condition, demanding that Odin place his hand in his mouth as a wager. Odin, known as the most cunning in the world, naturally did not trust this. He refused. At this moment, the war god Tyr volunteered to put his hand in Fenrir's mouth, but he did not expect Fenrir to bite off Tyr's hand. Odin mocked Tyr for his foolishness. Even more infuriatingly, Tyr's beloved, Demeter, was taken by Odin. This double blow made him hate Odin deeply. At this crucial moment, Odin appeared, admitting that he knew a great battle would occur between him and Tyr, but it was all due to Tyr's jealousy towards him. It nearly infuriated Tyr to death. Though Tyr's eloquence was not as great as Odin's, he was not afraid of a contest of strength. Odin proposed to let Tyr spare Jack, offering his own life in exchange. These words moved Jack, but Odin, as the Norse god of war, was determined to die in battle if necessary. He took out a necklace, activating a barrier, and challenged Tyr. Amidst shimmering light, the three of them entered the arena together. The millennia-spanning decisive battle was about to begin. Tyr was determined to emerge victorious, launching a fierce attack on Odin first. Jack could only watch from the sidelines, but it became evident that Odin was clearly outmatched by Tyr in a contest of strength. He quickly found himself at a disadvantage. At a crucial moment in the battle, Jack intercepted a fatal blow, being thrown several meters away. As Tyr taunted Jack, Odin, with the sword of the All-Father, stabbed Tyr from behind in the chest, putting an end to the era of the war god. Upon seeing Jack save him, Odin felt a deep sense of gratitude. He realized that Jack was becoming more like him, despite never openly admitting it. In truth, Jack's ambition was no less than Odin's. This is an inherent trait. As the runes glowed, Odin disappeared with Tyr's body. That day, Jack and his neighbors went ice skating on a lake. A black shadow streaked across the sky, quietly landing on the ice, and then vanished. Just as Jack was puzzled, he suddenly fell to the ground, witnessing something unbelievable. Underneath the ice, there seemed to be a shadow, swiftly wiping away the snow on the lake's surface. It was an elephant made of gold, the elephant spitting out a gold coin, which quickly melted the ice and emerged from the water, seemingly growing legs, sliding under an abandoned car, as if conveying a message to Jack. Before Jack could make sense of it, the female neighbor rushed over. Jack asked her if she had seen the gold coin, but the neighbor thought that Jack had hit his head and was hallucinating. But when Jack looked back in that direction again, the coin had already vanished. Meanwhile, unfortunate news came from the town again. A young boy had hanged himself at home. The sequence of events left Jack feeling unsettled. When the police arrived at the scene, they found the clothes of a missing girl. Based on this discovery, the officers concluded that the boy might have been afraid of exposure and chose suicide. After Jack returned home, he felt that things were not simple. It was clearly a setup. At that moment, Jack's divine power began to manifest. The book started to freeze. Jack hurriedly flipped through the book to search, which documented the young people who had gone missing over the years, each one's time of death, all falling between the 28th and the 30th. Jack found Officer Charlie and informed him of his discovery, but Charlie didn't believe him at all. Seeing Charlie's disbelief, Jack had no choice but to leave. Walking back home, he happened to see the townspeople celebrating the ice sculpture festival. The supermarket owner's wife approached Jack. Seeing him almost wearing his worries on his face, she comforted him not to do anything unworthy and ruin this beautiful night. As they were conversing, Jack noticed that a sudden glow coming from one of the ice sculptures, and hurried over to it, only to find a gold coin inside, the coin emerging from the ice sculpture on its own. Picking it up and examining it closely, it was the same one he had seen earlier on the ice lake. All signs indicated that everything was related to the disappearance of the coin and the car above it. Jack immediately ran to the ice lake, where he skated during the day, and discovered the abandoned car, opening the trunk to find the body of the missing girl inside. But Jack hadn't had time to feel sad for the girl, when suddenly the ice cracked open, and Jack fell into the water along with the abandoned car. Suddenly, a dim blue light illuminated. The soul of the girl drifted out from the car. Soon after, dozens of young spirits appeared at the bottom of the lake. As Jack resurfaced, he found himself in the supermarket owner's wife's house, which surprised him greatly. As Jack left the bathroom, the supermarket owner's wife seemed to have been waiting for him there, her expression seeming unusual. She expressed that, since Jack had been trapped at the bottom of the lake for so long unharmed, it seemed like some power was protecting him. The supermarket owner's wife was no ordinary person. Jack suddenly remembered the annual famous car sinking contest, hosted by this very supermarket owner's wife. As long as one can accurately predict the time when the car sinks to the lake bed, they can win a huge cash prize. He connected the dots with the missing young people, who were likely connected to the sunken car, and the boy who committed suicide. Might have been a way for the supermarket owner's wife to absolve herself of guilt. But what Jack couldn't understand was why the supermarket owner's wife would do such a thing. The supermarket owner's wife spoke up, revealing herself to be the town's guardian deity. In order to bless the prosperity of the town, a sacrifice of a young person must be made every year, not for herself, but to repay a debt to Odin. She pleaded with Jack not to intervene, as she saw Jack as a child of Odin, therefore not wanting to provoke a conflict. Just at that moment, police officer Charlie suddenly appeared here, attempting to subdue the supermarket owner's wife, but bullets had no effect on her. Her wounds miraculously healed. Charlie realized she was not human. The supermarket owner's wife counterattacked against Charlie, and sent him flying far away. At this moment, Jack saw a blood-stained dagger hanging on the wall, perhaps the only weapon to fight against the supermarket owner's wife. Charlie was in danger. Jack rushed forward and slashed the dagger at the supermarket owner's wife's throat. Blood gushed out, engulfing the room in flames. The mystery hanging over Lakeside Town finally cleared. Jack entered the restaurant, intending to treat himself to a good meal, but unexpectedly heard a voice, realizing it was his wife, Laura, who wasn't there to rekindle their past. She came specifically to inquire about Odin's whereabouts, as she sought revenge. Odin's actions led to Sven and her fate. Faced with such a request, Jack was in a dilemma. After all, it was his biological father, but all of this, Laura was unaware of. Nevertheless, Jack still told Laura about this matter. She was very surprised, but seeing Jack's serious expression, Laura knew he wasn't joking. Not getting information from Jack, Laura could only bid farewell to Jack. In fact, Laura also had a way. She found her friend Salim, and learned that Odin was gathering followers at a hall in Cleveland. The two of them immediately set off, heading to Cleveland together to gather information. When they arrived at the location, the doors of the hall were tightly shut. Just as they were figuring out what to do, an old figure suddenly appeared behind them. It was the avatar of Mr. World, the leader of the New Gods faction. He offered to assist Laura in achieving her goal, but the condition was that Laura had to act personally. In exchange, they would ensure her safe exit. Once the task was completed, the old man emphasized that this had to remain a secret, to prevent retaliation from the old gods. Laura accepted the terms. However, assassinating Odin was not that simple. First, Laura needed to infiltrate the secret vault of the Sun God, where she had to steal the only weapon capable of killing Odin, the Spear of Destiny. The new gods gifted her with a high-tech phone, equipped not only with satellite navigation capabilities, to help Laura locate her target smoothly, but also to assist her in obtaining the crucial weapon. Following the instructions, the two arrived at their destination. They received a message, which surprisingly instructed Laura to find an Irish leprechaun. The innkeeper was reading a book, when suddenly an Asian man burst in, claiming that the police were after him, and that if caught, he would face death. Upon hearing this, the innkeeper handed him the room key, allowing the Asian man to hide. Soon, the police arrived. The innkeeper remained calm. The police declared that they were looking for a homosexual suspect, which sent a shiver down the innkeeper's spine, strengthening her resolve to protect the man, as they shared a common cause. At that moment, the innkeeper's gaze fell upon one of the officers. Surprisingly, it was her former lover from years ago. At that time, the innkeeper was still a typical young boy, and the officer had feelings for him back then as well. Although her appearance had changed, the officer still recognized her, even though the innkeeper was now a woman. Even the innkeeper hadn't expected that the officer would recognize her. To cover for the innkeeper, the officer eased the tension. Out of respect for their colleague, the other police officers had to temporarily leave. The next morning, the innkeeper personally served the Asian man, delivering a sumptuous breakfast. He didn't understand why he was being treated so generously. It was only then that the hostess revealed that she was also a homosexual, and upon seeing her lifesaver, the Asian man confessed his own identity. Several hundred years ago, he was in love with a magistrate in China, but this relationship was soon discovered by the authorities. In that era, he was sentenced to a severe punishment. After his death, his spirit did not depart, continuously haunting the magistrate. To appease his spirit, the magistrate built a temple to honor him, making him a revered deity among the people. He was known as the rabbit god. The hostess was somewhat skeptical, but just as he was about to depart, the rabbit god left a blessing upon the inn, wishing prosperity and success for the inn, longevity and good health for the hostess, and making the inn a sanctuary for homosexuals. Since that time, the rabbit god disappeared, while the inn thrived over 70 years, business booming more than ever. Laura was searching for the Irish leprechaun doll, who happened to be the bartender at this inn. Laura explained her purpose. However, when Laura mentioned her name, Doll thought she was a fraudster, as he had heard that Odin had killed Laura. Laura showed the lucky coin of Sweeney, which convinced Doll of Laura's identity. In fact, when Odin first tried to kill Laura, he first sought out Doll. However, Doll, being gentle and kind-hearted, refused Odin's request to harm Laura. He rejected Odin's demand, angering Odin greatly. Odin destroyed Doll's lucky coin. From then on, Doll's life took a dramatic turn, and he became a bartender. Doll promised Laura that, if he could assist Laura to enter the Sun Vault and obtain the Spear of Eternity, the coin symbolizing luck belonged to him. Although Laura had 100 reasons not to, but to achieve her revenge, Laura eventually compromised with Doll and handed the coin over to him. With the lucky coin in hand, Doll entered the Sun God's treasury. However, soon after, Laura realized something was amiss. The process of obtaining the Spear of Eternity, which should have taken just a few seconds, but now, Doll's presence was nowhere to be found. She realized that she had fallen into a trap. Her initial plan to use the Spear of Eternity to defeat Odin had backfired, losing even Sweeney's lucky coin. Laura scattered Sweeney's ashes into the river and embarked on the path of revenge alone. At that moment, Doll suddenly appeared. Although Laura had obtained the Spear of Eternity, this weapon was not something anyone could wield. Laura was just a mortal, and Doll taught her how to use it. Yet Laura couldn't even throw it 5 meters, let alone stand against Odin. Perhaps moved by Laura, Doll returned the lucky coin to her. After getting back the coin, Laura's power approached demigod levels. She hurled the Spear of Eternity 100 meters away. Meanwhile, Odin had already arrived in Chicago, where he found Cenneborg. Cenneborg's fighting spirit had nearly worn out. Odin decided to negotiate with the faction of the New Gods. Although this was just a scheme by Odin, Cenneborg, out of dedication to his beliefs, he rejected the proposal, believing that without war, their existence would gradually be forgotten by the world. On the rooftop, Cenneborg swung the hammer of darkness, unleashing his inner fury. Yet ultimately, he chose to trust Odin, and engaged in the negotiation with the New Gods. The next day, they arrived at the agreed location. Soon after, the leader of the New Gods, Mr. World, also arrived. Odin proposed that war would only result in mutual loss, and that peace among all would lead to mutual gain. However, Mr. World disagreed, intending to offer the old gods just a tiny corner to exist. This also exposed his intention to exterminate completely. As he was about to depart, Mr. World uttered harsh words, declaring the imminent downfall of the old gods. Faced with such provocation, Odin was unable to refute, while Cenneborg refused to accept it. He hadn't expected that the former god of war would be so feeble. Even without Odin's involvement in the conflict, Cenneborg would personally gather the old gods to battle against the new gods. Odin remained silent, disappointed in the old man. Just as they were about to leave, Laura appeared suddenly, with the Spear of Eternity in hand, pointing it at Odin under the gaze of the gods. Odin had anticipated this, and offered no resistance. Cenneborg immediately unleashed his divine power, shrouding the sky in darkness instantly. At this moment, Laura clenched the lucky coin. She hurled the Spear of Eternity. The god of darkness, seeing this, swung the hammer of darkness towards Laura. In this critical moment, Doll tackled Laura to protect her. At this point, the new god secretly assigned to protect Laura swiftly arrived, taking Laura away from the scene. As they parted, Laura tossed the lucky coin to Doll. Just as Cenneborg's hammer was about to strike at Doll's vital point, the power of the coin helped him escape unscathed. Odin watched as the Spear of Eternity flew towards him, yet he made no move to defend himself. The tip of the spear pierced through his body. The powerful impact sent him flying 100 meters away. The valiant god of war met his downfall at this moment, accompanying Odin's demise. far away in the town by the lake. Jack naturally sensed it. At this time, Odin's companions, Hugin and Munin, swiftly arrived to find Jack. It was then that Jack learned of Odin's death, and hurried to where Odin's body was kept. The moon goddess Eirik expressed that this was a domain devoid of divine power, where all deities were unable to wield their powers, thus making it the ideal place for negotiations between the new and old gods. Eirik particularly mentioned that Mr. World was to hand over Laura here. It seemed that behind this exchange lay all the scheming and plotting of Mr. World. As Jack entered the hotel, Tilia rushed over and embraced Jack, accusing Laura of being the mastermind behind Odin's murder. Meanwhile, Laura had also been arranged at this hotel by Mr. World. She was unaware that she was about to be handed over to the vengeful old gods, as Mr. World sought to confirm that Laura had killed Odin out of vengeance. In doing so, he could avoid many troublesome matters. Before departing, Mr. World revealed that all the old gods had gathered here, and if Laura was discovered by the old gods, she would have no way out. After Mr. World finished speaking, he left. At this moment, Jack wanted to go see Odin's body, but was stopped by Senneborg, as the reason was that it was necessary to wait until midnight to enter. Jack stated he wanted to personally keep vigil for Odin. According to Norse tradition, keeping vigil for a deity involves being tied to the world tree for 9 days and 9 nights. For a deity, this is considered a test, but for an ordinary person, it's akin to a death sentence. Jack insisted on keeping vigil for Odin. As midnight approached, Laura still didn't trust Mr. World, so she climbed up a ventilation duct and escaped, only to climb into the room where Odin's body was kept. Suddenly, footsteps approached the door, and Laura hid beneath Odin's body. By this time, everyone had also entered the room. It turned out that both new and old gods were here to negotiate. Mr. World stated that handing over the culprit was not an issue, but the condition was that he had no involvement in the matter, as it was all a consequence of Laura seeking personal vengeance. Mr. World shifted all the blame onto Laura. Angry, Laura hid under the bed. At this moment, Eirik spoke up. Following the ancient Norse tradition, Jack must avenge his father personally. In front of so many people, Jack could only agree for the time being. At this point, Mr. World's plans seemed to be succeeding, as he led everyone to Laura's room, only to discover that she had already escaped through the ventilation ducts. She was gone. Chernobog wanted to settle the score with Mr. World, having grown tired of Mr. World for a long time. Just then, the faceless new god brought Laura back to the room. Observing Mr. World, who had betrayed them, Laura was prepared for this, revealing all of Mr. World's plans, including how she acquired the Spear of Destiny, and learned Odin's exact location. All of these were part of Mr. World's scheme. Now that things had come to this point, Mr. World could no longer explain himself. Chernobog raised his hammer of darkness to strike Mr. World, but as the hammer was about to hit Mr. World's face, it was stopped by an invisible barrier. As it turned out that this was the epicenter of atheism, where his dark powers lost their effect. Eirik suggested prioritizing Odin's funeral. As for the power of the new gods, that could be dealt with later. Although Chernobog was reluctant, he ultimately accepted this decision. Mr. World understood the old god's determination, and declared that he was ready to fight at any time. Then he left. The old gods prepared to return Odin's body to the world tree. At the moment of farewell, Chernobog handed the hammer of darkness to Jack, asking him to end Laura's life. After all, Laura was once Jack's lover, and Jack couldn't bring himself to kill her. Laura stated that Jack didn't need to overthink it, as Odin was just using him, and advised Jack not to sacrifice himself for Odin anymore. Jack reaffirmed his determination to keep vigil, which meant he would spend 9 days and nights enduring a severe trial on the world tree. Chernobog witnessed Jack not killing Laura, and immediately began to instruct him, but Jack knew that he was Odin's only successor. He insisted that the power to judge the killer rested with him. This statement left Chernobog momentarily speechless. On the other side, in the hotel, Laura unexpectedly received a visit from Queen Saba. It turned out that the previous day, Queen Saba, through clues from the goddess of love, discovered Jack's secret, and learned that he was not complete. He had another soulmate, which was Laura. On another front, since being dragged into memories by Queen Saba, the tech god's body had developed issues, and he needed repairs. However, the repair system required the input of item 1 to proceed. Given the circumstances, he had no choice but to search frantically in the headquarters. While Mr. World was away, frantically searching in the headquarters. The new god responsible for protecting Item 1 vehemently tried to stop him. He took out the tech orb that had previously sealed the tech god, attempting to contain him once more, but the tech god seemed to have acquired a mysterious power, rendering the tech orb ineffective against him, and instead he imprisoned the new god. The tech god finally found Item 1, only to discover that it was just a piece of stone. But when the tech god touched the stone, an energy surged into his consciousness instantly. Mr. World hurriedly arrived, and the tech god inquired about the true nature of Item 1. Mr. World revealed that it was a treasure, and also the source of human technological advancement. As technology advances, the tech god himself is also evolving continuously, but the cost is gradually forgetting his origins. In reality, as the most powerful being, he is a crucial piece in the hands of Mr. World. This is also why the tech god has made repeated mistakes. Yet Mr. World still chooses to handle him with leniency. He keeps the tech god imprisoned here. The tech god wants to know who Mr. World really is. Facing the tech god's doubts, Mr. World confesses that he excels in strategy and deception. He is none other than the trickster god, Loki. On the other side, the old gods arrive at the place where the world tree grows, the core of the Norse gods, where even Odin once sacrificed himself. Jack, in order to protect Odin, decided to spend 9 days and nights beneath the world tree. These three are the Norns, the three goddesses, whose responsibility is to irrigate the world tree with the well of life. For Jack's vigil trial, they will be in charge of the trial, where the well of life will cleanse Jack of his past. Although Chernobog appears disdainful, thinking Jack won't last 3 days, in reality, he is trying to persuade Jack to give up. Even though Jack is a son of gods, he is ultimately just a mortal, but Jack is resolute in his decision. The gods place Odin's body at the foot of the world tree. Once everything is prepared, the Norns accompany Jack to the tree. From this moment on, Jack is about to undergo a severe trial of 9 days and nights on the world tree. Amidst mystical incantations, the vines of the world tree entwine around Jack's body, as the goddesses caution him not to struggle, as it will only worsen his plight. Jack is suspended in midair by the world tree. The vigil ceremony thus begins. Although the world tree seems rude to him, Jack, bound in midair, has no other option. The first day quickly passes. Jack remains steadfast in his heart, thinking of it as a minor challenge. As night falls, he remembers what Boranoia told him, reminding himself that in confusion, the stars are guiding lights. On the third day, the scorching sun beats down on him, all part of the world tree's trial for him. At this moment, a figure of a black man appears amidst the dark clouds, named James. He tells Jack that he has been expecting Jack. By the fourth day, Jack is already exhausted, wearily looking up at the sky. To his surprise, he sees the figure of Laura. Laura tells Jack, "You are on the brink of death." But Jack firmly believes that he can overcome this hardship. On the fifth day, hunger torments Jack, yet his strength awakens in adversity. Suddenly, snowflakes drift down from the sky. He opened his mouth to taste each snowflake, trying to alleviate his parched throat. As the snow continues to fall heavily like goose feathers, Jack's body becomes buried, and he delves into his innermost self. There, he encounters a group of black people picking cotton, the first batch of black slaves brought to the Americas, including Queen Sheba. Despite the passage of time, racial prejudice still plagues them, yet Jack seems to have been given a special mission to lead them out of suffering. This is also why Queen Sheba assists him, helping him find his soulmate. Jack's heart begins to waver. He wants to reach out to these people for help, but the giant bull appears once again, and the world tree also towards Jack launches a fierce attack. In intense pain, his strength is once again ignited. This time, he unexpectedly finds himself in a realm of consciousness, a business jet, where he first met Odin. Odin is seated beside Jack now. Odin says that they are on the brink of life and death. At this moment, teeth suddenly tumble down from Jack's head. These are all offerings gathered by the war god Tyr in his lifetime, but after Tyr's death, Odin took them for himself, using them for his own rebirth ceremony. Odin admitted that he had planned everything before Jack was born, by gaining Jack's trust, making Jack willingly sacrifice himself, and in doing so, a sacrifice of his own flesh and blood, allows him to reach his peak state. It turns out that the so-called vigil was just to fulfill the sacrifice. Jack finally understands the purpose of his existence is simply to sacrifice himself for his father. He sheds tears of pain under the gaze of the gods. Jack is consumed by the world tree. Chernobog can't help but question whether the era of the old gods has truly come to an end. At this moment, Odin's ravens, Munin and Hugin, arrived at the World Tree, at a time when confusion reigns among the people. Odin's body has already disappeared. This signifies that his plan has been successfully executed as intended. Thus, the plot of the third season comes to an end here. American Gods Season 3 aired 2 years after the second season. The series still heavily relies on visual effects and carefully aligns with the original work, yet has sparked controversy. Firstly, the plot is still filled with various additions like in Season 2, and the interludes no longer captivate the audience. The dragging of the main storyline almost tests the viewer's patience. Secondly, while aesthetically, one can see an attempt to return to the style of Season 1, it fails to revive the declining trend of the show. Efforts to develop characters mostly end in failure. A prime example is Laura, who, despite going through purgatory, shows little growth afterward. The dialogues are quite dull, and the attempt to create a duality between Laura and Shadow by merging various storylines from the original work, such as the Lakeside Mystery and the ATM Scam, which are favorite chapters for many fans. The result is a disjointed and anticlimactic ending. I recommend that everyone to go and check out the original work. If you enjoy my channel, please consider subscribing.